Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world at the moment. We are once again compact and bijou. I never know, it says this hangout is live. And then, oh, Jamie, sounds like you might have a bit of sound. Oh, super broken, Jamie. Super broken.
I'm getting electrocuted here, it sounds like.
Yeah, I'm going to mute you, Jamie, I'm afraid.
The newest electronic song.
Let's see if I can mute him. I can't. Yes, I'm muting him. Well, there we are.
Oh.
I think that was some sort of encoded information rather than speech. And he's a young bloke, so he probably does do digital encoded. And we probably should have understood that. Anyway, dear viewer, welcome to you wherever you are in the world. Welcome to. We had to bring back a Canadian quickly again.
Yep.
Only Canadian getting back quick. Of course, there's Bruce. And also here is Rob Thompson from CUAS Coalition. So let's start. Let's start with no. Important, serious news to start with, and a heartfelt wishes must go out to Bruce, because I read about the chipocalypse that's going on down in New Zealand. And have you got your supplies in? And are you all right?
Yeah, it was an accident. It was a mistake. Someone ordered the wrong number of potatoes, and so we don't have a great potato famine. We're down a bit, but it's not at critical level yet. We can still survive.
Oh, thank goodness for that. I mean, it made all the papers here that there was a chip shortage, and there was going to be dilemma over Christmas time, that you couldn't have your favourite snacks, and of course that caused me some great concern and sort of restless nights, really, just worrying about it there, Bruce. But anyway, let's move on to Canada. Let's move on to Canada, on a subject that speaks nicely both to Alan and to Rob, really, with the counter UAS, and that is the great first Canadian drone strike. So congratulations, Canada, you've joined the party.
Apparent drone strike. Is that actually confirmed yet?
Come on, you can't ruin all the good stories that are out there. We know it was a drone strike. It's been all over the media. It must have been. Surely. Come on, Alan.
Yeah, well, even like I said, I read in the thing, it says, should Transport Canada decide to investigate it? Why would you even think about potentially, if you investigate it, if you know all the facts that something crashed into it? That actually makes no sense to me. But yeah, but I was looking everywhere in the world, everyone's reporting it as if it's all confirmed already, which again, where's the facts if it was like an actual crash? And even like some of the data doesn't actually make sense to me, because if you see Garneau's response, he said that this plane was estimated to have flown about, 1,500 feet, like with the crash. But when you go to the official site, like the CADORS, it says they estimate this plane, or when they were landing, could have been 24 to 2,400 feet, and it was 7 miles out or something like that. Like, make up your mind, which is it?
Yeah, well, if it's 7 miles out on the approach, then you could work that out. That'll be a known. It'll be plus or minus 100 feet of a given approach altitude there. So that would be quite easy to work out. So that's interesting. So that's new to me. So they don't actually quite know where it hit it then.
That's the other confusing thing too, because they said it hit it, but there was very, I guess, minor damage, if nothing. But then if you look at the reports again, it tells you what the damage is supposed to be, I guess, on the aircraft and the drone, and both of them, they indicate on here, it says unknown. How can there be unknown damage if the thing actually did crash? How does that make sense? Somebody reason it out to me. You guys are in another world. Maybe we're just crazy here in Canada.
Well,
there's one thing I see here. It says minor damage. It doesn't say specifically what the damage is. Then when I read here too, it says it's 3 different types of aircraft. Despite the name Skyjet, they fly King Air 100s and 200s, plus a Beechcraft 1900. I'm very familiar with these 3 aircraft, and I would say that they're not flying as fast as what you would think a jet would be flying. So we still haven't seen a really fast impact yet. But these aircraft are pretty robust. I mean, if certain spots get hit with a drone, it's going to be bad problems, like through a windscreen, as I say, or ingested in one of the engines, and then you have a problem. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think it was I believe from the various reports I've seen, it was the 1900. But again, that's subject to confirmation. And certainly the image of damage or alleged damage that I've seen is a 1900 leaning edge. And you might be cruel and say it looked like someone leant up against it and scuffed the paintwork. That's about the, or someone was moving the ladder in the hangar, and yeah. And well, I think for me, and I wish I'd been better at keeping records, but am I right? Not right in thinking, Alan, that the very next day the very day was the day that your results came out for your survey, or it was the final day or something?
Yeah, that's one of the first thing that came to my mind that was coincidental because this apparently happened on October the 12th, and October the 13th was actually the last day that the Canadians could give public feedback about the regulations. So that was a little bit weird, in my opinion, that this kind of happened right before that. Does it mean anything? I don't know. That's for everyone else to decide amongst themselves, I suppose, if it actually meant anything at all. But it was kind of interesting how, like, when this happened, even with this press release they took it as an opportunity to say, well, this is why we're coming up with these regulations and all that. And even reading, like, with these articles, like the ones in Quebec cities, when they have experts, they tell you how dangerous a drone could be when it flies, I guess, towards a windshield. But they use theoretically, that's what they use an example. Theoretically, if a 35-kilogram drone crashes into it, I'm like, who flies a 35-kilogram drone? Like a recreational flyer. It's like, it just seems like a big opportunity to, I guess, spew the regulations and everything like that.
Yeah, I'll put a shout out to Robert Elliott and Above and Beyond, who are in the chat. Dear viewer, dear other viewers, so there's at least two. If you want to join in and throw questions at us, you're welcome to put something in the chat, and we'll probably ignore you, or Bruce will anyway, because he's very much like that. But he'll know, because he's in the future. He'll actually know what your question is going to be, so he'll be able to answer ahead. What's your take on this one, then, Brucey?
Yeah, not enough evidence to confirm that actually happened. I mean, we've seen so many of these things before. There was that African airliner that got punched in the nose, supposedly by a drone. Later turned out to be structural fatigue. We've seen airliners landing at Heathrow that have impacted drones, turned out to be a shopping bag. So there's a certain threshold of evidence required to make these things credible. And I don't think we've reached that threshold. As you were talking, if it's 7 miles out, we don't have any recreational drones that can travel that distance. Also, this was in a geofence zone that DJI have, so you couldn't go that high or even fly in some parts of that zone using a DJI Phantom. And as we all know, if you look at the newspaper reports, it's always a DJI Phantom. So, and I'm sure that if it was a Phantom, that DJI would have reported that to the authorities, because they seem to be quite on that. They're saying now that we're going to report any kind of stuff like this to you if you need that information. And they're working hard with authorities because of the aeroscope system. But, it just doesn't gel. There's just not enough credibility to this report. So I still tend to think we've only had the one confirmed incident, and that was the Black Hawk helicopter that I know of. But I'm sure that for others, the media would be all over it like a rash.
It's interesting that that those P4 arm images are appearing in this Canadian in reports for this Canadian incident, and it's the same P4. So that, I tell you, when that P4 went in New York, the bits went everywhere, didn't they? It went a flipping long way. It's yeah, crazy.
Such was the force of the impact, eh?
Absolutely, absolutely, all the way there. You brought up aeroscope. We were maybe going to talk about aeroscope a little bit later, and this is again something that Rob can speak to. Are you welcoming? I've not even been drinking. Aeroscope in the counter UAS world, Rob. Is it a good or a bad thing?
I'm not really even going to talk about it, because a system like that from someone that's not U.S. based to us just doesn't seem secure. I'll leave it at that.
Oh, okay. Oh, he's as bad as the American lawyers. So it's based on security. So, all right, what about if we just disconnect it from the company that have created it and just have it as an idea? Should every manufacturer be providing a system for law enforcement to use to find and track their products.
Now that's a manner that's up for grabs right now as to what people believe and should think about this subject. Moving forward, there has to be some kind of identification system that's going to, in my opinion, say there's an alert to your controller. It says you're in violation. Please call this phone number in some way that now, since it's gone to that controller, you've been alerted and it's on your responsibility. See, that's the chief principle of self-regulation, is to be able to, make the first step forward and call that phone number. So until some kind of plan like that's put in place, housed here in America on American servers, that law enforcement can access, then I just don't see many other regulations moving at all.
Okay. All right. And what about, did we see, I don't know, do you want to comment on Aeroscope a little bit more there, Brucey, or anything? Or Alan?
It's an interesting idea, but it is proprietary at this stage, and therefore it's only going to work on DJI. Therefore, it's only going to address a small sector of the market. Sure, it seems to be a fairly problem sector, but then it's just going to drive people to different brands. And I don't know that DJI have thought this all the way through. Perhaps they think we're going to curry favour with regulators by providing all this extra information, but they may turn around and find that suddenly someone comes out of the blue, as tends to happen in high-tech industries, with a product that's just as good, but doesn't narc on you to everybody, in which case DJI could find themselves scrambling for ground because the market could disappear underneath them, certainly at the consumer level, because consumers are very fickle. If something better comes along that is more advantageous for them to use, they'll jump ships immediately. There's no need to remain in allegiance with DJI if a better product comes out. So they've got to be really, really careful with this. It needs to be, any system like this needs to be open source. And we've got to establish that there is actually justification for it. Because, I mean, why don't we have a tracking system on handguns, which if you have a handgun and you take the safety off, it reports immediately where you are, and the police can be informed of that. Because more people die of handgun related attacks than drone injuries or drone attacks every year. So why are we prioritizing drones so high on the list of important things when there are so many more dangerous aspects of life out there that we gloss over, we ignore? Someone said in one of my comments on one of my recent vlogs that these drones should be regulated to fly no higher than 400 feet, just because that's the legal maximum. You shouldn't be allowed to fly higher. You should have technology in them that stops you. And my response was, well, then why don't auto manufacturers include governors to stop your car exceeding the open road speed limit? In fact, my GPS, when I drive around town, it automatically knows how fast I can go on any road I'm on. So why isn't it tied into a GPS so you can only ever do a maximum of the posted speed limit? Because every year in the USA, cars kill 30,000 people. Drones kill nobody. So why are we busy trying to hog tie this relatively safe technology while ignoring the really big threats that technology could address and save many, many more lives? So again, we've got to get across that we're dealing with hysteria. Sure, things could happen. Drones could hit airliners and knock them out of the sky. It's never happened yet, but we have to take that into account. But we look at the risk, the probability and the consequence, it's still a really, really small risk. So supposedly we've had 2 mid-air collisions between drones and manned aircraft. The outcome has been nil in both cases. No injuries, very, very minor damage. So why are we planning as if even a close encounter is going to take dozens or hundreds of lives? Silly. Let's just focus on the real problems. And yeah, we've got to mitigate the risk where we can, but let's not go overboard and kill an industry, kill a hobby, kill a community just because someone doesn't understand the problems.
Yeah, close encounters you mentioned there, that is one of the sad aspects of all of this, is that UFO reportings are going down, and I personally feel that they're much more exciting than drone reporting. But anyway, Alan's not old enough to understand the reference I mean there. Just looking at the comments, Mark Strong says, do we have an actual link? Do you have a link to the actual aircraft report? And we don't. I don't think there's anyone seen the pilot report from Canada, or is it just, it's only been news, hasn't it, so far?
That's the one I was looking at with the Cador's one. That's why I said it says the damage is unknown and all that.
Okay.
And it says, yeah. And it says so basically the estimate is 24 to 2,400 feet and everything like that.
Okay, so that's the actual pilot report. Maybe,
I believe so, yes.
Maybe
can
you
drop
chat? Yeah, can you link that on the chat? That would be great. And then but beyond that, ADSB is just about now being required. ADS, yeah, well, I'm gonna drop back to Rob. We mentioned ADSB many times here. I am, and I am not an ADSB fan. I enjoy it for my aircraft spotting nerdiness. I think it's great that aeroplanes have it, but I think it'll be kind of pointless for unmanned aircraft. The controllers will go nuts if dozens and dozens of phantoms pop up on the screen for 6 minutes or 10 minutes at a time. It'll just be overload. Oh wow, well, Alan, that's a heck of a
That's
that's a heck
the
of
government's link.
it's the government's link. I'm going to copy this the government's link and put it in the live chat. Dear viewers, stand back. Here comes a. This is gonna fill the chat. Here we go. There it is. Did I post it? I don't think I did. Oh, it's too big. No, it won't let me fill it in that.
Oh, really?
No, it won't let me put it in there.
One thing with ADSB and transponder systems, Gary, is of course it'll tie in nicely to UTM because it means that you'll be able to be charged by the minute for your flight because they'll know as soon as you lift off the ground, how long you're in the air, where you go, when you land, and you just get a bill at the end of the month for all your flight time.
Well, as long as there's enough ADSB receivers within the area that they're trying to regulate, and that's why on earth why do we want to jump on a technology from bloody 1990 with a really old GPS standard? You know, we could use.
You do understand how aviation works, don't you?
No, not really. Isn't it magic? Isn't it? It's all magic. I believe
it has to be. The technology has to be 20 years old to have made its way through the certification process.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. No, I hear you. I hear you there. Yeah. Google Armstrong. Is that a link shortening tool? All right. I shall go off and try and find a link shortening tool. Rob, what's your thoughts on ADSB and our world?
ADSB is good for manned aircraft and general aviation stuff. They outdated. All the airliners are going to the SATCOM systems, medium networks, and
did you see
stuff like that?
But did you see that the
integration system is going to have to utilize something like that?
The Iridium system failed this week and has been it's been banned. Yeah, it's banned is probably the word. By quite a few flight control centers. I just happen to have that Auckland, so it's Bruce's fault, Anchorage, Oakland, New York are not accepting Iridium commands or sending them at the moment. They had an aircraft where the receiver went down in flight, and the last message that was sent up to it was climb flight level 370. When they looked down, they saw it and they did it, and they kept doing what it said based on old data. So yeah, that's quite new. There's been a bit of a fail with that Iridium system, which is very interesting.
Who knows? Maybe it was already hacked.
Well, yeah, of course, that is a huge problem with all of it. Any of these systems can be hacked and stuff be made to happen. ADSB is butte for that. You can even, well, we've said it before. You can use flight gear to inject traffic into, as long as you've got a grown-up's ADSB transmitter, you can put false traffic in to the real system using open source stuff. So yeah, and people are rushing to it. I'd say I enjoy it. I don't want to diss it too much, and I think aircraft should have it. The aircraft should have it, and I think we should have a more secure electronic means to put ourselves into a UTM. Let's hope that Richard Parker joins us. I think he's got the current the only UTM that I would countenance at the moment. Oh God, we're talking about next gen, says MF Boom. Yeah, exactly. Next gen, such a such a success. Anyway, right, we're wandering around a bit. I'm wandering around a bit. So yeah.
Next gen, the run and joke on that's, it's the next generation before it's implemented, right?
Yes, well, yeah. But yeah, I mean the GPS requirements for ADSB here, they are banging on for people to have the TSO GPS, but it's such an old spec. It really, you're getting History Channel GPSs in your 2020 gear. It is, you know, this one's from the museum. They're just rubbish. But anyway, anyway, what's Robert saying? Go on, mate.
Well, one thing to remember though is that over 90% of, or probably way more than 90% of all the drone traffic is recreational. It's hobbyists. It's the commercial drone market. Although we talk a lot about it, it's still incredibly small in terms of percentage of the total drone traffic. So we tend to lump it all together and say we've got to have this UTM, we've got to have these transponders, ADS-B. But really, is it kind of really necessary for the average hobbyist in the park as long as they stay below 400 feet? I think we are seeing a problem that doesn't yet exist, and so why throw conventional technology at it? Because by the time it becomes a problem, we'll have much better stuff to throw at it. And as you say, ADS-B is so old school. You know, what people should be doing is now looking and developing technology that's going to last another 2-3 decades, with a view to implementing it in say 3 to 5 years' time, which is when there'll probably be the demand for it. Instead of trying to jump the gate and get in there now with some really stuff we're going to regret later on.
Well, yeah, we should be using systems designed now for 2040, not designed in 1990.
Yeah, I'm also concerned about. I'm kind of concerned about reliance on satellite systems and even GPS to a degree, because we've had a couple of close calls with coronal mass ejections recently, and imagine if we've got all these drones and everything floating around in the sky, and we get hit with a coronal mass ejection and the GPS system goes out.
Just remember,
satellite.
This is a family show. You stop your language. You should stop that now.
If this underlying critical layer of our infrastructure goes out, what's going to happen to all the drones that are flying at that time? What's going to happen to all this traffic control system when all the drones are supposedly sitting at GPS coordinates 0, at an altitude of 0? Whoa, have we got any sort of management plans for that? Because this could be a major event if it happens, and we get very little warning of these things. And so, is there an emergency response system built into the technology so that we can say, right, everyone has to land or whatever because we've got a CME coming and it's like 8 hours away or something, or even just minutes away? I think we are not thinking, in some ways we're thinking too narrow, but in other ways we're not thinking broad enough, because so many lives could be lost if we suddenly lost the GPS.
Well, I think we're definitely moving to, and this is your territory, cruise missile territory, where they used cameras and stuff like that, didn't they, back in the day? And we're moving to the point where you'll have vision-based systems that will be able to work out where they are in the world, or say, oh, GPS went a bit dodgy here. Right now, what was I looking at? I don't think that's a million miles away. And the same for getting out of the way of manned aircraft and all that sort of thing. UTMs are just a wet dream of drone delivery people and things like that, in order to clear out airspace so they can make commercial use. And I've said it this last week. What I'm really worried about is they'll do that. They'll make all sorts of rules because it's cheap and easy for the FAA, CAA, and whoever else to just jump in on it and have them spend the money and sort it all out. And then when those drone delivery services don't really work because the autonomous van works in all weathers and carries a ton of gear instead of one 1 kilo package, they'll disappear out of town and the regulations will stay in place. That's my worry. That's been my rant anyway.
Drone delivery is already a thing. I had 2 delivered last week by the mailman.
Oh, God. Of course.
That's funny.
Yeah, I walked into that, didn't I? Let's see. MF Boom's saying about opinions of bird strike versus drone strike. My opinion is, if you hitting a Death Star, if you hit the right part, it's going to hurt the manned aircraft. But generally, yeah, birds, drones, about the same.
Well, there's another factor in that equation which people often overlook. They talk about a drone hig an aircraft, but the thing is that we don't have flocks of drones, but we do have flocks of birds. Just ask, the flight that crashed into the Hudson. Yeah, it's like birds individually, because they say, oh, a drone's got more concentrated mass and it's got an explosive lipo. Yeah, so there's that factor which may make a drone more dangerous than a bird. But 50 birds versus 1 drone, I think I'd rather be hit by the drone.
Rob, you're a pilot. What's your thought on that?
I haven't had to face down any drones, but I've seen some people that have, and they said that they felt pretty fearful. I'm also going to say that you got control over a drone, whereas you don't over a bird. So you kind of got to take your chances with a bird. And birds have never let me down. I've been pretty close a bunch of times in very small aircraft. I always want to pull up as they'll try to dive down and roll a wing over as they're coming towards you. You know, that's how you avoid a bird, especially flying in the hills.
You're right. They do try and detect, sense, and avoid you. That is part of their thing. When we are rotary flying, the vultures and eagles tuck the wings and dive down, and that's always a bit frightening when you're looking up through the rotors and you see them tucking, and then you think, oh no, because you don't want it to.
You pull up right towards them, and you can always guarantee that their defense system's going to do exactly what we spoke about. So on these droners, I don't know where they're headed. So that's more scary. Plus, if I'm going faster too, you can't really avoid these birds. Overrun them. You know, anything over 200 miles an hour, you're going to overrun the bird fairly quickly.
Yes, you watch them. If you're at low level, watching them rise from fields is always very exciting, isn't it? Knowing that the next thing is it's going to be part of your life in a microsecond's time. Yes. Counter UAS, Rob. No, I'm wondering about it again too much. Let's go back to those deliveries, because Bruce mentioned deliveries, and Project Wing in Australia, not a million miles away from you when the tide's out. What is it with delivering fast food? Why is that always the target flipping thing? Is fast food? But I thought they were in the. Did we see the? Sorry, go ahead, Bruce.
Yeah, it was the burrito. People deliver fast food because no one cares if it falls in the dirt and gets lost, because it's not worth anything. It's crap. So it's not a valuable commodity. And if it fell on the ground and got run over by a truck, it would taste just the same. So no one's going to know.
Fair. Well, there we are. Well, now I know. Well, now I know. So thanks for that. And it's interesting, and I know you mentioned it, Alan, as well. It's interesting, this hovering and dropping of stuff via a line. I just think, that's going to take so much time, so much energy. Really, when are we going to get the system that can actually do that? I think we're several years away from that, aren't we?
I think so too. Yeah. Right now it's mostly just testing. I think people just like the novelty of it since you're not used to it. So it doesn't matter how they get it, as long as they get it delivered through the drone. It's basically cool at this point, as opposed to really in a functional way, I suppose.
Yeah, and I thought what I was amazed, the Google folks sent me that quite a few hours before anybody else. It was very, very interesting with a few other comments. And in the videos, there's all manner of your a drone enthusiast, there's all manner of Easter eggs. You can see exactly what the motors are. There's all sorts of stuffs written down the side of the boom of the thing, whether it's all Duff Gen or not, I don't know. But if you wanted to build your own one of those, there's beginning to put enough information in that video for you to have a crack at it. So fair play to them. And of course, they're at the home. They just happen to be just around the corner from Tridge in the RG Pilot project. That's exactly where they're testing that at the moment. So funny old thing. I wonder why they selected that area. Maybe we'll find out in the end one day. But fair play to them. But I did see, again, another mention for New Zealand. It's all about New Zealand this week. The Chinese have converted one of your aircraft. I'm going to read what it's called. It's the the Pacific something or other, P750, into an autonomous aircraft that carries a decent load. Now that's drone deliveries, when you're taking a ton of stuff somewhere. And I see you even made a video of one making a noise at your airfield there, Bruce.
Yeah, actually, are they drones or are they pilotless aircraft? Because there has been a distinction over a certain weight level. We get into the pilotless aircraft arena, where a whole different set of rules apply, certainly in this country. But that's interesting. That's the same company that was selling spare parts to North Korea in violation of all sorts of treaties. The company that makes those planes, yeah. They got in big trouble recently because they've been sending bits off to North Korea. Harmless little bits like uranium purification devices. But no, there was some spare parts for the planes. Apparently, China's been buying the planes and then slipping them under the border into North Korea. So North Korea just orders the parts directly. Yeah, they're an interesting aircraft. They're not particularly high tech. They're a sort of a variant of a top dressing aircraft we've had here for many, many years. And it'll be interesting because, we've got the US military uses so many large pilotless aircraft that but I think it's completely different to the drone side of things in so much as just the sheer scale of it. Probably it would be easier to get past all the red tape using one of those because they're already certified airworthy. They've already gone through all the checks and balances. All you need is just someone to tick off on the autopilot or the control system and you're away. Easier than actually building something from scratch, even if it only weighed 50 kilos. It's so crazy.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, I put up the post a week or so before. I think just convert all the C208 caravans so that you've got a perfect fleet, and it can operate within the airway system, within the system that it operates as a manned aircraft, but autonomously. There's
It's no different to the same thing flying an autopilot, is it?
No, none at all. And a great way of getting rid of the light aircraft risk is by flying at night, as funny enough, pretty much what that FedEx fleet does anyway, just moving stuff around for the next day's deliveries.
My only concern would be that something like that could crash into my Phantom.
Well, yes. But your Phantom soon will be very good. Oh, people are getting wound up about the Phantom 5, aren't they? I haven't put that here. It's not coming yet. Don't stop getting wound up about it. RYBAT mentions cognitive radio SDR time of flight for triangulation. Yeah, it is far more accurate than GPS. You're right. And funny enough, we actually play with that here for animal tracking and using LoRa radios that cycle through multiple frequencies. You can also work out the thickness of, because you are going to have some refraction issues and stuff like that off different substances. You can, if you bang out, do it over multiple frequencies, you can work out what the error is due to, be it a grass or tree or a building. There's all some very, very clever stuff out there. It's just very, very expensive to use the software to do that. I've gone off topic altogether, haven't I there? But comments are going off topic. That's no good. So no, well done then, New Zealand, for that. And then before we turn to Rob and ask him about what he's doing with the CUAS coalition, the flex rotor, 32 hours for a VTOL aircraft flight. That's pretty jolly impressive, and it's no coincidence that we use that aircraft as our logo, because I think that is going to go a long way. And what I love about Aerovel is they're quiet. You don't really hear anything about them, but then when they do something, it's like, wow, they really have moved the ball forward there. There is nothing close to that. Anyone got any thoughts on that flight?
Well, yeah, I mean, like this flight test, all well and good, but where are the 3D renderings? You can't have any credibility without 3D renderings.
Yeah, that's very, very true. And putting light-hearted music on your videos, that doesn't impress anybody, does it?
It's good to see someone dealing in the real world where the sky is actually blue.
Yes, there you go. And well, I mean, one of their first, I can't remember what the build was, but one of their first ones, they launched from an autonomous boat. It got airborne, did its thing, and landed back on the autonomous boat. And that was just this roll. These are our mucking about videos. So that thing is going to be everywhere. And for those that don't know, it's Dr. Tad McGeer who's in charge of all of that, and he was the chap that got the Aerosonde, the Lima was the first one, I think, that got across the North Atlantic from Canada again to Ireland, and he did that a long time ago. And he's done many other amazing things, including making the scan. Can you tell he's a bit of a hero of mine? The Scan Eagle as well was another one of his. And they are just a team of people that plod. I'll say this sounds a bit agricultural. I'll say they're plodding on, but they're not. They're right at the cutting edge, and they're the only people, unless anyone else has seen one, that's got a huge rotor or propeller for the main one and two tiny props just to give it some yaw authority in the hover. And I think you watch people start adopting that quick now, unless they've super protected it. Rant ends. Right, move on to CUAS Coalition announces directors and movies. Rob, what is the CUAS Coalition? What's your point?
PowerPoint is civil defense. Right now we have counter drone equipment industry that's running crazy. People are using jammers and selling jammers internationally to other countries, have enforcement problems. But what they do have is American flights and other countries' flights that travel through these countries, wreak havoc on certain systems so that the systems become inoperable. That's going to be a problem. So there needs to be education to use drones and to also comply with the regulations that we have. Our coalition really isn't about or regulations against hobbyists or the media. Safe platforms and channels of communication for these folks to be able to operate in a safe manner. And another part is to develop equipment and standards that's going to be used nationwide for critical infrastructure defense. Certain people that fall into categories that need protection and securities from drones.
So where does all that fit in with UTMs then? You must love the idea of UTMs because that's going to give you all the good guy data.
Well, I've spoken at length about UTMs, and I'm really on the fence about them. Negative stuff right now, and I could say some positive stuff. But I really think the whole idea of those things is going to be put on the back burner because the security issues right now are too great. I think our country's pulled together now and has made an assessment to change. I think we're watching those steps unfold right now. Have me back on in January to discuss the new changes. We'll take it from there.
You can't leave it hanging out in the wind like that. What new changes? New changes in the way that the FAA are going to police things. New changes in the way that the military are going to have defenses set up. What? Go on, give us a clue. You can't leave us hanging to January.
Well, a extension now, which is the easiest way to get language put into an exemption process to be able to use this equipment. We are mindful that the media and the press want to be able to use this equipment as well, and we've came up with solutions for that. About strategic plan, how to areas such as spectrum and electronic technologies through possibly the FCC, and then if you wanted to use any other type of mitigation process, you would need to get a further license through DHS. Inside baseball and where we're thinking. And we think a great idea would be a pilot program to be able to use some of this equipment and try it out.
Well, funny you mentioned pilot programs. That's a bit of there's two FAA sort of stories, isn't there, kicking about. One is the emergency ruling. They need to be able to do some stuff quick, and the other one kicking around is the potential of UTMs and pilot programs to allow particular states to have their own regulations, which to me just strikes me as utter madness to have. You don't jump in your car and drive across America and then change. Or do you? You don't, do you? You don't change how you drive your car as you go from state to state, do you?
We would consider that like some checkpoint Charlie stuff here,
Yeah.
We don't have anything like that, no. And that's never going to happen. I don't understand where these people come up with these ideas. They're not very thought through. It goes completely against anything that the FAA would ever recommend. So why would the people that control the airspace ever delegate their power down to the states? And why would they do it for drones? When you put a price tag on actually the commerce that they're churning, even with all these big numbers they spit out. I mean, that's not even a year's budget for one airline. So, I mean, what's the incentive?
Well, yes, but apparently it's on the president's desk awaiting his signature. It was supposed to have been done last Friday, but I can't remember what he did. Can't remember what he did last last Friday, but he would have done something that will have moved that on in the kicked it down to this week, and this week he's having a bad week as well. So. But several of you know what I'm talking about. We all know it's the word on the street, isn't it? And the AUVSI and all sorts of other people have are pushing for it, and it bewilders me.
I don't think it's going to happen.
You don't think
People
it's,
have lost it.
you reckon they've just
I think it might be a political stunt, and I think everyone's bought into it. But I would hold fast because if that changes, they set themselves up for all different types of lawsuits and liability, and no one's even gotten involved in looking into that yet. And I think the sheer volume of the way that people would try to change regulations to a state level would just get out of hand. Like it's already tried to get out of hand. All these local drone ordinances and stuff. I don't know. They're really muddying the waters. I think the left hand's not speaking to the right, and I don't believe the legal counsel would ever support this vote ever. And I know these people, like you guys, would have tea and crumpets with these folks. There's no way. So you know, let them go ahead and think this. There's no way.
Okay, so you're just coming down on the no way, even though
Well, look at these other bills from Feinstein we've seen in California. Every time that she comes out with a bill, everyone on I'm going to say the West Coast, but buys into this hook, line, and sinker. Like it's the bee's knees. And where do these bills go? They never go anyplace. So, I mean, that's not the channels for opening things up. And everyone clamored to that one. Here in my state, we got Warner with his bill. You know, I'm going in his office this week. I don't know how much I supported that bill. There's probably 70% that's good in there, but the other 30 I don't support. I don't personally think it's going anywhere. So even though he's doing the whole mobility unmanned keynote announcement and stuff about his drone bill, I don't think it's going very far. So, I mean, these things can hit the media and spin all they want, but when it comes to tire on the road and going through the works, it's not going to happen.
It's funny you should mention mobility unmanned or whatever it was, because I believe that's what it was all of this was lined up for until it was kicked down the can. Is that what you heard as well?
I don't know. I haven't heard too much. Well, I said they need to get some real leaders and invite myself over there. And they said they were going with this crowd. And I said, all right. So, you know, we'll see what comes of it. How about that?
Yeah.
You know, and you can look at my track record. I'm pretty much I'm 9-9 for everything, folks. So you can go back through all the tweets or whenever I've documented this stuff. You know,
yeah.
If it is, I'll be super shocked, and I can always be wrong. But I tell you, it's not going to be that cut and dry like the road to UTM. I just, you know, it's got some problems.
Well, and then surely this other emergency ruling that the FAA are going for, which is to get through all these operating in town centres and all that sort of a thing. Is this not also trying to sort of pander to that sort of UTM style of thing as well?
Well, they want to be able to fly and use this waiver system a lot faster. If you go in there and look, you'll see that there's all these bogged down requests. They don't have the infrastructure to be able to run these systems. And that seems stupid to people, but you know, they were on a paper system just 10 years ago. I mean, this is a government. So you can't rush things too quickly, because if they make a mistake, then the mistakes are just compounded. You know, the money that's lost, the time and efforts. So they rather just go slow and be, you know, reactive to things than to ever change. So, I mean, you have to look at it from that nature as well. And then it comes down to economics. Like if there was you know, an economic driving force, or if like industry got off their tail ends and didn't hire who I consider non-experts as the thought leaders on this thing and put this together right, then yeah, we could be UTMing all day long. But yeah, people haven't stepped forward. I don't see any credentials. That's why I put this coalition together. I went and found all the best folks. I don't need anyone else to tell me how it's going to be. I'm going to go make it how it's going to be. And then, you know, when we have great people working in teams, then the collaborative forces help out as well. And it wouldn't be just my opinion; it's a whole group of folks' opinion.
And we just we put a post up about it, so we can. There'll be a link in the show notes below. But yeah, we put a post up about your team. And it immediately made me think you're going to go out and make it happen. It swung me back around to Canada, this hit and all that, and the fact that people are reporting. There are RPAS drivers that are reporting manned aircraft that are going out of the way, and that would be part of the way for this industry to start making itself known. And Bruce put you know, made a fair point in a vlog. We've got to make ourselves known, and we've got to let the regulators know. And before very long, there will be regulations that, or things that happen to manned aviation that make them get out of the way of money earning unmanned aviation. I don't know, maybe Bruce, you can pick up my awful link to that.
No, you're right. It's going to show a maturity of the unmanned aviation industry when manned aviation regulations reflect that RPAS are every bit as legitimate users of the airspace as manned aircraft. And it's a bit unfortunate that we would have to regulate pilots or force them to do things that they should be doing themselves as a matter of course, because it's in their own interest and safety, like the sub 500 foot thing. I've had so many people email me and leave comments saying I was flying somewhere and a plane came through at 150 feet. And they shouldn't have been doing that. And I've always said, well, report it, make an incident report, because we need to balance the books a little bit here. We will have all these incident reports where a pilot spots a drone, but when a RPAS operator sees a plane operating outside the scope of the rules, then they have to report that too, so that the authorities can build up a profile of who's doing what and how best to address the problem. If they don't know the problem exists, they can't address it. So we have a responsibility as a community and as an industry to make sure the ledger is balanced in terms of these incident reports.
Yeah, no, I agree. And perhaps we can chuck in a couple of UFOs as well, just to bring them back up the list as well, because, you know, I feel sorry for them. I really do. All right. Has anyone else, because I think I've run through my list, is there anything else that has got anyone else's attention in this last week?
Well, there is the whole issue of consultation between regulators and the audience that they seek to regulate. It's interesting, back at the beginning of this year, the UK held a consultative process where they invited people to make representations. They got 678 submissions on their consultative process that closed in March this year. CAA have just announced that they got 1,245 responses to their one in New Zealand. Well, we've got less than a tenth the population of the UK, but we've got twice as many submissions. I think that's kind of interesting, really. And apparently most of the submissions were from recreational users. So, I don't know, what do we read into that? Is there anything significant in that? And what about, I haven't heard how many people responded to the FAA's call for submissions. Couldn't find any results online about that. Does anyone have any information about how much, I don't know what about Transport Canada, it's too early to tell, but are we seeing a turnaround? Are we seeing the fact that the community and the industry is now not just happy to sit around and be told what to do, but now they're actually realizing if we don't have our say, then we may not have the outcomes that we're looking for?
That's a fair point. Well made. It might be beginning to get through to enough people. We've been banging the drum since 2007 and no one's been listening. Maybe it's getting through now and it affects enough people. Alan, have you got any? You won't have any idea of the numbers in Canada yet.
Not yet. We're still waiting for all the results, for the feedbacks and everything like that.
It's
I don't think Transport Canada won't know either, because I went to that website where they put up, file your submission or you have a say on this website and I looked. What a disaster that was! That website where you could go and make concerns on the regulations. I mean, if you put in careful formatting, if you left a blank line, it would just chop your submission off there. And people went to great lengths to format their pages, and it came up as a big block of text. These people obviously don't have a clue how to use the internet for these things. They should have just gone to SurveyMonkey and used that because that works, or something like that. But no, they wanted to do it themselves. So this is Transport Canada. They don't know their own phone number. They don't know how to use the software. They don't know how to set up a simple. Really, and they're responsible for regulating drones. No wonder these aircraft are being hit so regularly by drones in Canada. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I know that I got some data for you. I was told in August 2016 that there was about a arrest a week. One person was arrested a week for a drone violation. And now I've combed through some other data, and it's up to about 5 people a day being either a drone reported, or an arrest, or some kind of violation reported to and such. So that's where we are now. So it's a little more than a year.
Didn't mention it before, did we? Yeah, did we see the guy in Guernsey, which is an island just off France but belongs to England and all that, whatever, all that sort of a thing? The chap that got had a flyaway and it landed at Guernsey Airport, but right next to where all of, cause it's a tax haven. Guernsey's a tax haven, so all the very very wealthy people's jets, and they fined him nearly 2,000 US dollars, about 1,500 quid. But what I thought was a bit harsh was they destroyed his drone as well. What do we think about that?
It wasn't a drone; it was a surveillance drone. There's a big difference between a drone and a surveillance drone. So yeah, that was, these rich people don't want to be spied on. I can't understand how surveillance drone works when it didn't have an SD card in it.
Yeah, yes, it's a fair and valid point. It didn't have an SD card, and with a little bit more digging, which I didn't add in the article because I thought it was a bit unfair, I did notice that 2 years ago the same chap was charged for money laundering, and I wondered if that's why him and some mates managed to filch £500,000 and go off and have lovely helicopter trips and holidays and all sorts of things. So I half wonder if he got that extra punishment because because he'd been a naughty boy before. But yeah, I thought that was unusual. And it's a very small island, so if you have a flyaway there, you are very likely it's very likely to go somewhere that you don't want it to. First time I've seen one destroyed by the courts. I wonder if that's going to be the precedent now.
Wonder what sort of drone it was, because it wouldn't have been a DJI because that's got the geo thing. It shouldn't have flown near an airport.
No, absolutely, no, of course, no, absolutely. And sorry,
I
Rob,
prefer,
what do you prefer?
counter drone? I prefer counter drone equipment that doesn't destroy the aircraft. Electronically, it manipulates the protocols and sends it home, or it won't even permit it to take off. Save.
But that's
And then in the future iterations, we hope to have the capabilities to identify and say, or we've seen these people over here for a while now, always flying on Sunday data.
yes. Well,
So
that's
I'm laying out the tracks, very mindful of the community. Matter of fact, one of the people on the coalition team there is from AMA. They're the safety guy over there. So we're trying to be as mindful as possible with counter drone equipment. And I really think the path forward involves a great deal of development in that area, airports and some of this critical infrastructure up, and we could loosen the regulations on folks because the counter drone equipment is so good. We should worry about that anymore. Most of these drone problems are right near airports.
But this counter drone stuff, I mean, like, it sort of leaves me a bit confused. If you have counter drone technology built into your drone, then like these systems, then surely the bad actors will just bypass that. They won't give a damn, and it'll only affect people who are probably going to follow the rules anyway. Is it going to be a big thing, counter drone stuff? I can see near airports perhaps, but wouldn't education be every bit as important?
In countermeasures, the first act of countermeasures is divided up into 50% of countermeasures is education. So before even boots on the ground and such or calculating a mission, you should go out and educate folks why they shouldn't be doing this in the first place.
And is that your AMA link up then? Your AMA link up then, really?
What's that, sir?
That's your AMA link up then, is it, Rob, really?
Yeah. That we'll be mindful, and we're hoping that people equipment can be stopped. And I'm not going to go into those details for security reasons, but there's ways to stop drones that JI, I mean, thing with aluminum foil and rubber bands, talking about them using a geofence system or something that's secure. So it's very secure. I mean, at this point, you can even see CNN and other folks that are doing all kinds of tricks to, basically bypass any of this stuff. You can buy Russian apps, things that can be done to bypass this fairly simply. So the counter drone equipment I'm speaking of is equipment that it doesn't matter what software you're running, you'll be captured or electronically taken over control and landed, or caught somehow in some kind of kinetic weapon.
Oh, so you're talking kinetics as well. But back to the electronic measures, then that would the electronic measures would suggest that there are ways into these systems, and those ways have already been found.
People with libraries of mostly every drone. Even if some of these systems aren't GPS and stuff, they can still be taken over through their chipsets in amazing ways because these people are very, very, very talented. I've already looked at the problem. Like an 80-70% solution. You always have some very smart lone folks that could create some ways through. The education piece comes in. We hope to deter anyone that would be thinking of doing something stupid or any of these what we used to call YouTube cowboys. Now it's almost the norm. But back, 2012 or 13, some of these would see,
Back in
personally,
the
I think some
day.
of this building diving stuff. Yeah, some of the building diving FPV stuff we see now, I really like it. I think it's awesome, but it has its place. There's some people that do it smartly and some folks that don't. So I'll leave it at that. I think it's all illegal, but I mean, whatever, it's still cool. Come on, folks.
Yeah, no, there's plenty of very cool. Sorry, Bruce, after you.
Yeah, it's interesting that I know a lot of the guys that do the building diving have got 107s, and it's interesting to note that some of the stuff isn't very safe, in so much as there could be people walking out of doors and things or whatever. And yet the FAA seems to have taken no action. And as I think we've already discussed a million times, regulation without enforcement is a complete waste of time. If it's voluntary, you might as well just make it all advisories and just do away with regulations. So I wonder, are the regulators taking their responsibilities serious, or do they just want to be able to tune up masses of paperwork and say, look how clever we are, look how much work we've done, without actually going to the next step, which is making sure that people follow these regulations? For example, the drone strike against the Black Hawk helicopter, the guy wasn't following the regulations. The drone strike against the plane in Canada, if it actually happened, the guy, if it happened as suggested, he wasn't following the regulations. So instead of just changing the regulations and having all this anti-drone tech, how about we start enforcing them? So that we say if someone does something that endangers a personal property, then we kick their asses and throw them in jail so that it's a deterrent to others.
Yeah.
Well, I wish it was that cut and dry. But the civil litigators will be out with the ambulance chasers, as they say, in liability and insurance, and they have a lot of money and pull. Area of quicksand regulatory stuff that's hard to overcome. Another great solution would be to have counter drone equipment on all this aircraft, such as EMS stuff and firefighting aircraft. If we had electronic mitigation equipment on that, then these wayward people could try to fly and they wouldn't have too much success. Equipment works, anywhere from 5 to 7 kilometers out, sometimes even further. High angle like that in an aircraft. So, as far as regulations, people don't always follow it. I mean, yeah, that's true. You're going to have those folks, but regulations are in place. And it's not that the man crowd is ever going to deregulate themselves in a manner that's unsafe to allow drone folks to adhere to their standards. It has to be the other way around. The man folks have all the money, they have all the machinery, they've paid for all the navigation equipment and for most of the regulations for decades. So why should they change anything that they're doing to accommodate drone folks? Drone people should get over that, and they should move forward in a safety conscious manner. Some works and learn to use that to their advantage, because there is an advantage to understanding a system. If you don't want to do that, then that's fine as well. But the system is designed to spit you out so that you won't ever. So you can look at it either way. And the safety system's been safe for all these years, and they haven't bent the rules. I mean, usually when people die, they change the rules, right? That happens, the rules won't change. If we get some deaths out here from some drones, well, yeah, they'll be regulated back into the Stone Ages. I guarantee it. For that,
I think I recall people saying
counter drones, education.
Yeah. People used to say that about the horse, the farriers and the horse sellers and the buggy whip makers used to say that about the horseless carriage as well. I think we're just at a transition point, and what you say may be true now, but I think give it another 5 to 10 years, and the shoe will be on the other foot.
Yeah, I think big money
Maybe.
will take measure for instance. Big money is moving in and having the year. But you're on Capitol Hill. You're in Washington. You know better than I do what's going on there. But I think big money is pushing hard.
The four defense contractors, the four defense contractors in the U.S. in 1 second, they made more money than the drone industry has ever made.
Yes.
Just think about
no, I
that.
don't.
1 second, folks. Come on.
Yeah, no, I don't doubt that for 1 second. But things will change. And I think we could probably all agree on is that the market is way overhyped, and it's not going to make the sort of money that people think it is for many, many years. But there are uses, and there is cool stuff that can be done other than building, diving, and useful stuff that is useful to humanity, and that's going to start. That was a bit pompous, wasn't it? But that'll start coming along, and it must be allowed to happen. And manned aviation is surely going to have to give way slightly. But you're right, that aviation safety is generally written in blood, and we must always remember that. I left that too open.
If I had full cooperation from a chipset manufacturer and someone that could produce an airframe that looked like an airframe that's already in existence, I could have an unmanned aircraft riding on a UTM all by itself within 5 years. But if someone put up the money and put the belief in there, then I don't think that it's going to happen. Because I'm already talking to these folks. I got NDAs with all these folks already, and they're just, it's too much a beast. These people don't understand what's happening, like I say, with the left hand and the right hand. So I've created my own group, and I'm trying to approach so that we're smartly stuff the deterrents for people to not fly near airports, for one, or around these wildfires. I mean, it seems like a no-brainer now. We should have this counter drone equipment on these aircraft flying around. Don't have to worry about it. They can't even take off. Or anything out there that could get around it right now.
We've said it before. But that is part of that is the education piece, isn't it? And that is quite simply that's just getting out of the way of an ambulance, isn't it? It bewilders me why people are going to take pictures for News Channel 7 or whatever without the proper authorities of these wildfires and get in the way. That's just being a bad citizen, isn't it? It's just bad.
That's not part of self-regulation. They should turn themselves in.
Well, yeah, but it's just you get out of the way.
Everyone wants the self-regulation, but none of these bad guys turn themselves in.
Yes. All those housebreakers and other various criminals that don't hand themselves in as well. Yes, I hear what you're saying. Look, we've gone 2 minutes over the hour. Does anyone else have anything else before I put the hammer down? Alan, we've kept you mostly quiet over there. How's the beard coming on, Alan?
Nope, no beard. Can't do it.
Yeah, I'm sure with a little bit more effort. What are you worrying about in Canada in the next week?
Well, it already happened. Like, basically with the news, I guess I was even saying before, everybody knows about that infamous drone crashing into an airplane video, which everyone, I think of us, we know it's fake. And the news are actually using it on the live TV saying, this is what a drone can do. We're like, are you kidding me? It's just going out over and over again. So let's just see how it goes throughout the whole week.
Has it calmed down? Has it disappeared from your media now?
Like, in terms of the hysteria?
Yeah.
I don't think it's disappeared because everyone sees it as an opportunity, I guess, right? Like, when they see something big, drone crash, that's just what resonates with people. So the second they get something like that, then they post it up. And the unfortunate thing is, like this one here that got displayed on the TV, even though they took it down afterwards, they don't actually issue any kind of like apology to the public saying, oh, our bad, this isn't like, it wasn't real. So the average person will have that in their minds now, like a drone can actually do that, which is completely ridiculous. So that's a little unfortunate because they have all of the, the eyeballs. That's what most people are looking at in terms of the dangers of the drones. And you talk about things like education and like that. That's the unfortunate thing. They have the platform to educate people and they're not doing it. And in terms of regulations, I know people like myself that I fly it for fun. I get out there, I talk to people, I show them the drones. So hopefully regulations aren't ridiculous, because if it is, you're stopping people like me from actually educating people that use it like in an everyday kind of purpose.
That's interesting. That's getting back to that self-regulation. How will we self-regulate when the regulations become so strict that the drone community really doesn't exist? There's no one to regulate the bad actors then. They'll just go and do what they like. There's no one, they don't have any peers other than other people who are bad actors. So suddenly you take a community that is 99% good actors and you replace it with just the 1% bad actors who aren't going to follow the rules anyway. I mean, that's a bit of a worry, I think.
Well, shouldn't we all be working better? Shouldn't we be working better, working harder on peace and love and positive messages and all the good rules and all that sort of thing? Isn't it beholden on all of us to fly appropriately and push that sort of thing? Are we not doing enough of it? So that means the AMA, BMFA, Canadian Model Aircraft Association, are we not trying hard enough?
No, but the problem is that the problem sector isn't in the ranks of those organisations. The people who fly under the traditional model flying banner are almost, without exception, safety conscious and responsible people. It's the droners, the people who just bought their thing off, bought a new DJI Phantom, or they've bought something off AliExpress and they just want to go and have a bit of a fly. They live next to the airport. It doesn't matter because, and then it flies away and drifts into the path of an airliner. Those are the people. And the AMA, the BMFA, none of those organisations reach those people because they're not interested in flying model aircraft. They're interested in a camera that flies. And so we've got to, the drone community itself, it would be better to formalise it and make it responsible for itself, these droners, make them self-policing. Every time I go out to the park, I carry a bunch of little leaflets with me from the civil aviation here, the safety brushes. And whenever people come up to me and ask, oh, what are you doing? I say, I'm flying a drone, and if you want to fly one, here, look at this brochure, learn this first. And I try to do my bit to educate, and if everybody did that, then I think we'd have far more effect than just passing a whole lot of regulations and relying on the national model flying bodies to influence a group of people they have no contact with.
True.
I hear you on that. I agree with that.
And in the comments, Matthew Gordon says, regulate ourselves like golfers do. I don't quite understand that comment, Matthew. Does anyone understand that? No.
Was that like a gentleman's agreement? In golf, you're supposed to be a gentleman or whatever. But you cheat, right? Because there's mulligans. That's a known cheat. And then there's people pick their balls up funny and put them down, and they've
Bruce has got a video.
It's a family show.
Yeah, I'm sure you've got a video of that, Bruce, picking your balls up funny. I'm sure you have. Anyway, all right, look, it's 7 minutes past. Yes, okay, we get it now, Matthew. You're right. Okay, so with that, I will say thank you very much, everybody. Unless anyone else has got anyone else, I will say, and Awesome Cat said, can you do a video of how to replace the motors? Because my V2450 motor, all right, it's quite easy to replace the motors. You just lift an arm and take them out. Anyway, no, but yes, I'll do that. All right, okay. So going once, going twice. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, dear viewer, wherever you are in the world. Have a lovely, safe weekend that's coming up. And hope to see you all again 2100 GMT next week. Like, subscribe, all those other good things. Don't lie. YouTube nonsense. Thanks very much, everybody, for joining us. Thanks, Rob, Bruce, David, and we'll see you again soon. Cheers.